Reccia.
And I'm Tim.
And we're going to talk sci-fi today. You know, Tim, sci-fi is one of my favorite genres because there's so many places you could go. You could go artificial intelligence, you could go dystopian, you can go shoot 'em ups, you can go anywhere.
Well, it's pretty broad, and I think a lot of people don't even always realize just how much there is and how broad a range of stuff there is. Everything from a hard sci-fi to paranormal romance. The first book that I'm going to be talking about is Flowers for Algernon. It's probably my favorite book. It's a very simple story. It began its life in 1959 as a novella that won the Hugo Award. It was later published as a full-length novel in 1966 and went on to win the Nebula Award. And after that, it was made into a movie called Charlie, and the movie went on to win a couple of Academy Awards. The story revolves around developmentally delayed man who was working in a bakery, thought he had a lot of friends, and always wanted to be smarter than he had been. Whenever I suggest this to people, they tend to come away not really thinking of it as science fiction. I think often that's a sign of a really good science fiction book, is it becomes realistic enough that people don't think of it as science fiction.
Well, when we decided to do this back and forth on sci-fi, I said to you, there's no way that I can be doing sci-fi without talking about The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. And you said, sure you can. And I said, actually I can't. And the reason for that is because Canadian students read Margaret Atwood both in high school and in university, and pretty much everybody has read The Handmaid's Tale. But I don't think this is a book that should be just left to classroom discussion. Handmaid's Tale has to be read on your own, when there's time to contemplate the beauty of the language, the intelligence, the wit, the precision, and the ideas that Atwood brings out. It takes place in a totalitarian society in the United States, and it's very patriarchal to women. And women are not allowed to read, and they're not allowed to have friends, and they're not allowed to work. And Offred is such a woman. She is a handmaid, which in a time of pollution, people become infertile, and a certain group of women become handmaids, and they're given to the elite to produce children. What was really frightening for me in this dystopian novel was that there was nothing in it about the way women in society were portrayed that was really different from things that we have in our society or in different societies now. I think this again, I read a long time ago as a student, and I probably read it about 4 or 5 times since, and it remains fresh and classic, and I think really important.
Well, I read it as well. I really enjoyed it, but it wasn't one of my top picks, but it did, what you said is true. It is a type of book that stands the test of time. The next book that I'm going to talk about is a book called Ash and Winter, and Ash and Winter is the second in a series called the Ashwell series by Mike Mullen. It's a fairly new series, and it's a young adult book that revolves around what takes place after the super volcano in Yellowstone Park erupts and brings on a new winter for the world. He has to travel to his family in Illinois about 200 miles, 300 kilometers. When all the roads are shut down, he struggles to get there. He bumps into a girl called Darla. It's not what you consider a normal Wi-Fi angsty romance love story, which sort of, I think, appeals more to guys than girls, but there is kind of a romance that revolves around it. It's pretty brutal what they have to go through. It's not like a sort of touchy-feely type story, but it really was a good story, an excellent story. I started reading it after my son read it, and found it was really pretty captivating.
Well, we have an exciting announcement at Aurora Public Library because we're going to be having a superstar of sci-fi visit us. Do you want to give the announcement before I do this?
On May 5th, we're going to be having Robert J. Sawyer come and visit us. Robert J. Sawyer, I think Reccia might talk a little bit about it, has won pretty well every science fiction and fantasy award available, and some numerous times.
That's right. In fact, he's won the Lifetime Achievement Aurora Award, so he should be coming to Aurora Public Library.
It's appropriate.
Now, this is my favorite Robert Sawyer book. It's called Calculating God, and it's like no other science fiction I've ever read. It's Toronto-centric, so the ROM and what was the planetarium and all the streets and restaurants are all in it. There's lots of really great political jabs at the then Harris government, which was at the time that this book was written. So it's about places we know, and it's about people we can relate to. But it's also about alien races, and it's about space travel, and those are things that I'm not generally into in terms of science fiction. But this book was different. So imagine a spaceship, it lands in front of the ROM, and this sort of, an alien comes out, it looks like a spider, and what he says is, "Take me to your paleontologist." And enter Tom Jericho, who's the hero of the story, and he is an atheist, lifelong atheist. He is a paleontologist, he's a father, he's a husband, and he's also dying of lung cancer. And what happens in this book, aside from the whole space travel and quest to stop the destruction of civilization, is a very intelligent, thoughtful discussion about the existence of God on an interplanetary basis. And I thought that was such a fascinating exploration of ideas. It rates as one of my top sci-fi books, especially by this really, really acclaimed author who's done wonderful work in his life.
The last book that I'm going to be talking about is Wave by Robert J. Sawyer. It's one of his more recent books, and it's in the WWW series. This story is fairly complex, like most of Robert J. Sawyer's books, and it revolves around a girl that's blind, but she's also mathematically brilliant. And she's given an opportunity to get an operation to give her sight back. And when she gets her sight back, she doesn't really see, when she first starts getting her sight back, she doesn't really see what we see. She starts seeing the internet, and she starts detecting life that's starting to develop in her intelligence, starting to generate itself in the internet. And the story also has a lot to do with what really is life, when does life become something that should be sustained, and when is it really not life. So it's fairly deep in that respect as well. I found it was pretty captivating, but it also was a book that I had to read the next one and the next one to really understand where the story was going.